Would you like to learn how to make perfectly dry-aged steaks at home?
Well, today on WTF, we're going to look at umai bags and how you can make dry-aged steaks in your own house without a ton of extra equipment. Hello and welcome to WTF, where we transform food here in the Modernist Pantry Test Kitchen. I'm Chef Scott Guerin.
And I'm Janie Wang, one of the owners of Modernist Pantry. So here on WTF, every week we talk about unique ingredients, techniques, and show you exactly how you can do them in your own kitchen. So remember, subscribe and ring the bell and you'll get notified of our content when it comes out on Tuesdays. So happy 2021 from here in the test kitchen, and we are super excited to start the year off with a special two-part episode of WTF, and we're going to be talking about umai dry aging bags and how you can use them to produce amazing dry aged steaks and charcuteries in your own kitchen. So definitely stay tuned and learn about just how easy it is. And I think where we're going to start with today is a little bit about dry aging. What is it? Why do you want to do it? And then, of course, the technology behind the umai bags that makes this possible where previously was not accessible to home cooks like you and I. Now, Scott, let's start with a little bit of the background of dry aging and why it makes things tastier.
Sure. So everything that we get, meat-wise, generally beef, is going to be aged for 28 days when you get it. Okay. But it's not dry aged. You'll usually get it in a vacuum sealed bag or something like that, and that is wet aging. So when you get a fresh cut of meat, it's called technically a green meat. Then it must be aged for a little while so you get that really kind of familiar beef flavor. And then you can do something called dry aging. Dry aging is where you either take it out of that or you make it from a green meat and you can actually dry age it. So usually you need a temperature controlled room, humidity controlled room, a special chamber so you're not getting any weird pathogens or anything in there. And no one has that at home. It's very, very difficult. I mean, some people may, but it's very difficult to do that kind of stuff at home. And this makes it so much easier to do that. Yeah.
So, and it's kind of what I think when I think about dry aging. I'm thinking steak houses, walk-in refrigerators, racks and racks of different meats hanging there. What is it about the umai bags? And so quick note, we did feature the umai bags in our curing episode a few months ago. So if you do want to watch that, it'll be in the links in the description below so you can learn all about curing. But in that episode, we started using the dry aging umai bags ourselves, and we were like, this is incredible. And people were like, where do I get this? So now they're available at Modernist Pantry. So what is it about the technology or the design of the umai bags that makes it possible for people to do this in a refrigerator?
So a lot of people will look at this and just say, just looks like a vacuum seal bag, right? But it's not. It's actually a membrane that allows moisture to escape from the bag itself. So if you were to just throw this in a vacuum seal bag, none of that moisture or very, very, very small amount of that moisture will permeate out and you won't really get any of that dry aged flavor. When you dry age, you are actually letting the natural enzymes start to break down the meat a little bit more. It happens a little bit in wet aging, but when you're dry aging, you're pulling out any excess moisture, and that excess moisture is going to intensify the flavor, allow those enzymes to break down, the connective tissue that's going to make it nice and tender, and also get this really incredible flavor. So with the umai dry bags, you're going to allow that moisture out, and that's what this membrane does, and it's just so amazing that it actually works in any refrigerator.
Yeah. And when you talk about dry aging, there goes that knife. So when we talk about dry aging, one of the things we always notice is that it becomes smaller, it shrinks. What happens when that process goes on?
All right, so basically the moisture is getting pulled out of it. It's just like drying anything. If you were to throw something into a dehydrator, it's going to pull that moisture out. But so it's going to shrink, and there's going to be a thin layer that's on the outside, and that's called a pellicle. So that pellicle will then kind of adhere to the bag. You can see it's really stuck to the bag here, and that's what's going to allow the moisture to come out. So if you took a piece of meat and you dried it really well and you put it into this bag, it's not going to get a really good adhesion to the bag. So you want to have that so you can create that pellicle. And now that's going to get trimmed off. You're never going to cut that steak and then just cook that steak because that pellicle can be a little bit tough, right? If you're doing something like charcuterie, yes, you can use the pellicle because you're not going to be cooking it at that point. But with all that stuff, you want to save it. So this is all like the excess that we got off of a few of the pieces of meat that we dry aged. But that stuff's great. You can grind it right into like a burger, and you get that really dry aged meat flavor. You can add it to regular, wet aged ground beef, and you get that dry aged flavor, and you get a really nice use for this that could potentially be thrown away by a lot of people. If you don't let that, pellicle form, if you just kind of just seal this bag up, you're never going to get that real moisture extraction from the meat.
Yeah, and one of the questions that I had asked Scott when we started doing R&D on this is, like I'm noticing we're doing like big cuts of meat, we're doing roasts, and that's kind of what these bags are designed for. And I asked, like why can't we just do a single steak or like a small piece of meat? Like why does it always have to be big?
So if you were to do a single steak, you can see what happens here. This single steak will dry out, and it basically becomes just a big piece of pellicle, right? You don't want to do that because you want to have some sort of moisture trapped within the center of the steak. If you don't have that, like I said, you're going to end up with just a really dry piece of meat. All this would have to be trimmed off, and there may be nothing left in this. This is about 28-day just single steak. I wanted to show this. But with this, if you don't have a full piece or a primal cut or whatever you're going to get, like this started off as a 4-pound piece of sirloin, you're going to end up with way too much waste, if not all of it wasted.
Okay. Yeah, and one of the other things that we talked about, since we just touched upon time, the nice thing about the umai bags is that you can just basically vacuum seal it and then toss it in your refrigerator. And then once it's in there, how long do you recommend people dry age there for in order to get like a really flavorful steak or roast?
So that's where the fun of it kind of comes in. Whenever you're doing this and you're starting, I'm going to say 28 days. Stick with 28 days.
Okay.
28 days is going to be the baseline dry aging method. You can go up to 45 days. I've seen people go way over to about 200 days.
Okay.
So at home, when you're starting out and you're just learning, let's stick with something shorter, something like a 28-day. Learn how to do it. Make sure there's no issues with it. If for some reason any type of mold or anything starts growing in here, or if it smells bad, you can toss it out, right? When in doubt, throw it out. It's always going to be one of those things. But 28 days is where you want to start.
Okay. And one of the nice things about the umai bag, so over here we have, this is the sampler kit. So it comes with, I believe, 3 different sizes of bags.
Yeah, and I can show one of the bags here. This is actually the ribeye bag. So you can see the size of it. It's quite the large bag.
Yeah. So if you go onto our website, modernistpantry.com, all the umai bags will be on there. And you can either get a sampler kit like this, where you get a variety of different sizes, try them out. Or if you're like, I know I only want to do like small things that are a certain size, the sizes and the weight guidelines are all on each page. So you can be like, maybe this one's for me. So I really love how easy this product is, because I'm lazy and don't like to do a lot of extra work. So, and then what do we have here?
All right, so we have actually these 2 steaks here. These are the same exact Black Angus ribeye. I took it, I cut it in half, I froze part of it, and I dry aged the other part. This is actually 45-day dry age, so really beautiful, super rich, intense flavor of beef. And over here we cook them. Now when you're cooking something that's dry aged, you need to think of a few things. What are you taking out of the meat? Water. What generally stops things from cooking or slows things from cooking? Water.
Okay.
Right. So when you're drying or cooking something that's dry aged, it's going to cook a lot faster than something that is not dry aged.
Okay, good tip.
So these 2 cuts of meat, they're about 2 inches wide, so a really nice hearty steak. We cooked them at the same time, and it definitely took this not dry aged one a lot longer to cook than the dry aged. Also with the searing, you're going to get a really immediate, intense sear because it's not having to boil off that water before making the sear. So you get an incredible sear on a dry aged steak. So Janie, if you want to taste those 2 quickly, I'm going to actually talk about one thing, because people at home may not be able to do exactly what's done here. Now, if you have a home food saver, what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to use this. This is a vac mouse, right? And this goes right on where the seal is. And when you're home sealing, you're going to want to vacuum seal once and then vacuum seal a second time. Unless you have a vacuum chamber that changes the atmospheric pressure, you're going to have to use this vac mouse. So be aware of that, and it's very simple to use. You literally lay it in there, and then you just you seal it twice, and then you're going to be fine. So just be aware of that you don't just pop it in there and seal it. If you have a real vacuum chamber, then yes, you can just throw it in there and vacuum seal it as normal.
Yeah, and that comes with the with each purchase as well, so
Yes.
you don't need to purchase it separately.
Yep. And another little thing that you get there is the start date. So sometimes if you're doing a lot of things or you're doing certain things and you want them to come out on a certain date, you put in the start date and then you put it in your target date. So you can just throw it on the outside and pull it out when it's ready.
I'm
So what do
still
you
working
think
on
of
my
those
steak.
two?
So this one over here is the regular
Yep.
wet aged steak. I mean, it's delicious because it's steak, but this one is just so much more flavorful. It's just so like rich and definitely gonna eat more of this one later. So if you ever had a good dry aged steak, in a restaurant, you kind of know what we're talking about.
Yes.
Yeah, we don't need to explain it. If you've never had the experience of it, I would strongly recommend, spending the I don't know, it's like $20 or something. It's not that expensive for you to transform an ordinary steak into just this incredible dry aged, steakhouse quality steak,
Yep.
right? So
I'm actually going to give 2 more quick little tips
Okay.
just to make sure that people get everything about it.
All right.
Once it's sealed like this, you just throw it in the refrigerator on a rack.
okay.
So that's one thing that may be like, oh, well, what do I do? Do I leave it out? Nope, you take it and you throw it in the refrigerator. Any refrigerator will do. Obviously, if you have like a spare one in the basement, that's going to be the best one because it doesn't have so much stuff in it. You throw this right on the rack. Make sure that the airflow is good underneath. It doesn't need to be sitting directly on like a glass, shelf or anything like
Okay.
that. Make sure you just have a rack just so it's elevated so the airflow can go underneath and make sure that it's fully dry. So that's really one thing that you just want to make sure. You can do it in any refrigerator as long as there's airflow under it.
Yeah, that's a great tip. So we're probably going to put that on the website as well. If you want to kind of see how the dry aging process works in action, we are going to have a video up on this channel in a couple of days, and it's available on our Instagram right now at Modernist Pantry, so you can kind of see that steak transform into this one over the course of like 45 days, which is amazing. Then, of course, next week, we're going to continue our episodes about umai bags, and we're going to be talking about charcuterie, which is the longer term, do a lot of like fun charcuterie plates. So definitely stick around or stay tuned or come back, whatever the internet term for it is, next week as we talk about charcuterie. So from here in the Modernist Pantry Test Kitchen, I'm Janie Wang.
And I'm Scott Guerin. Thank you so much for watching. And if you haven't already, like, comment, and subscribe. And hit that bell so you get notified when we drop a new video.
To get today's recipes and all of our recipes, remember to go to blog.modernistpantry.com where you get recipes, ask a chefs, tips and tricks, and more.
And if you haven't already, tell a friend so they know what's going on here at WTF.
And as always, to get any of the ingredients you saw today, you can go to modernistpantry.com to shop.
And until next time, we'll be here in the test kitchen helping you create memorable and magical experiences.